listening to TMZ Movie Crashers.
Welcome back to TMZ's Movie Crashers. I'm your host, Fabian Garcia from TMZ.
I'm your host, Paige Cotton from TooFab.
It's been a somewhat busy week in movie news. Not nearly
it's
as
been a little different. The news has been different.
It's been kind of up and down. Not nearly as busy as some weeks have been.
Mm-hmm.
Not nearly as dead as last week was. Somewhere in between, I feel like. We can quickly recap what we're not going to talk about this week. We're not going to talk about the Amy Winehouse biopic. We know that they have picked their director, the director for 50 Shades of Grey. I forget her name at the moment.
Sam Taylor Johnson.
There we go. Thank you. So there's that. There's also the Captain America 4 news, which is that they've also tapped their director for that. Again, the name escapes me. Doesn't really matter. They've picked their director.
Yeah.
There was some, once again, resurfaced outrage aimed at Anthony Mackie because some people apparently are still upset that there's a black Captain America. Chris Evans came to his defense and said Sam Wilson, who is his character, is Captain America's kind of seemingly trying to shut down the conversation. Jamie Foxx is out here in a new vampire hunting trailer for Netflix. That looks interesting, I guess.
Interesting.
These are things we're not going to talk about. What else did you see that we're not going to talk about?
Did you see two quick things? Did you see that Top Gun Maverick surpassed Titanic as Paramount's highest grossing film in the domestic box office?
I did. I think it's over 600 million now, and it's
insane.
Yeah, and supposedly it's going to just keep climbing. Again, congratulations to Tom Cruise. By the way, speaking of Tom Cruise, Mickey Rourke taking shots at Tom Cruise.
I roll.
Just like, what?
I freaking roll.
Mickey Rourke calling Tom Cruise irrelevant. Like, bro, like who are you? Like, what? Like, you haven't done a movie in years, or at least one that hasn't mattered in years. And not only that, but he just looks like a mess as a person. But anyway,
and also James Caan.
Yes, the passing of James Caan. My God, like just that was super sad. He was older, so his passing doesn't really shock me as much as Ray Liotta's death did. Still, just an iconic actor. Sonny Corleone, Godfather. He played Will Ferrell's dad in Elf, and so many other iconic roles like Misery. Of course, I'm not going to forget that one. I love Misery. Such a good movie. So R.I.P. James Caan. These are things we're not going to get into in depth, though. Just wanted to mention. Where we are going to start, though, is with the big motion picture. And we are talking about this new movie that's coming out this week with some buzz, good and bad, sort of. This is Where the Crawdads Sing. It's not called This Is. It's Where the Crawdads Sing. Where the Crawdads Sing, based on the 2018 best-selling novel of the same name by Delia Owens, the author. And Reese Witherspoon is her production company. I think it's called
Hello Sunshine.
Yes, thank you for that. Hello Sunshine's behind it. I think she actually included the book in 2018 as part of her her book club list, which was
so big. It's big as like Oprah's.
Absolutely. So, and the movie is now coming out this weekend. Taylor Swift is kind of attached to that movie because she has a song that's featured on the soundtrack that got a lot of buzz too. And the reviews are in for the movie. We'll talk about that in a bit. But first, we need to talk about an apparent real life scandal that is surrounding this movie even before it's coming out. And this is so crazy. It's even crazier than the plot of the book, frankly. So
it's way crazier than the book. It's absolutely nuts.
It's nuts, but it also kind of parallels.
Which we'll get into.
But here's the headline. The headline is that Delia Owens, the author of Where the Crawdads Sing, which is what this movie is based off, obviously, she and her husband, Mark Owens, are reportedly, I should say, they are wanted in connection to a murder in Africa, in Zambia, in the country of Zambia. And this dates back to the 1990s, the mid 90s, when they, as a couple, they were like on this mission back then to like go to endangered areas with animals that are endangered and whatnot, and try to kind of play cowboy a little bit and try to become, I guess, like vigilantes and try to like step in
and overseeing like anti-poaching efforts. They were big conservationists.
Yeah, they're conservationists, and this story came out this week through The Atlantic. Shout out to the author Jeffrey Goldberg, who's the editor in chief and who's been covering this story for years. and who resurfaced it with the major update. The major update being officials and law enforcement in Zambia still want to talk to Mark and Delia Owens
and the stepson
and their stepson
and the son. Yeah.
About a murder that happened in the 90s, allegedly under their watch. Because here's the gist. They flew down there in the mid 90s to, I think it was to protect elephants or something like that, right? There's a national park there. There's a national park there in Zambia, and they took it upon themselves to fly down there to kind of militarize some locals in that area and to kind of start running this sort of like this like brigade or something. This kind of like it's and by the way, not sanctioned by the government whatsoever. This is just something that it was like a camp of sorts that they were running on their own with a bunch of hired hands from the area. And apparently what they did is they trained these guys to basically drive out poachers in the area that they say were like killing animals, whatever. That was kind of their whole mission. Like, oh yeah, we're going to step in and save the animals. But in doing that, again, not sanctioned by the government, not sanctioned by actual law enforcement, kind of taking this whole cause up on their own. Apparently they were running amok out there. They were taking the law into their own hands. And the big scandal is that they allegedly killed somebody. That's the reporting here. So
or they're involved.
Or they're allegedly involved. And that's what cops want to get to the bottom of out there. And they still want to talk to them. If that couple goes into Africa and Zambia and make themselves known, they will be detained and questioned by law enforcement, and possibly, depending on the evidence, I guess, they could be charged. So here's the thing. This is not coming out of anywhere. When this couple, the Owens, when they were down there in Zambia in the mid 90s, ABC actually sent a film documentary crew to film them for an hour's special. I forget what the name of the program was called. It was like a TV news magazine or something.
Turning Point.
Right, Turning Point. Right. It was hosted by maybe Barbara Walters or something. I don't know. Okay. Whatever. The point is,
it was about their anti-poaching efforts.
It was about their exactly. And they kind of hailed them as like heroes, et cetera, at the time. That the documentary or the hour-long special was very flattering, but what it captured was this alleged murder of an alleged poacher, a guy who the Owens and their camp suspected of poaching. So there's footage of this. That's the thing. ABC actually caught the killing on camera, and they aired it at the time. They kind of glossed over it. They kind of made it seem like it wasn't that big of a deal, but it's a massive deal. It's so big. And allegedly what happened was, according to the cameraman who spoke to journalist Jeff Goldberg, who did this article for The Atlantic. By the way, I encourage everyone to go read it. It's a good read.
It's like mind-blowing.
It's mind-blowing. It's so crazy. According to the cameraman who was there on the ground that day and captured this, he claims Mark Owens, Delia Owens' husband, by the way, Mark was leading the charge on a lot of this stuff. Allegedly, Mark is the one who fired the killing shots at this alleged poacher. And we don't know.
I thought it was the son. It was
no. The son. The husband. According to the cameraman, the son Christopher. What apparently he was doing was he was training all these like local Zambians or whatever.
Okay, that's because I know the son did something too.
Yeah, he was just involved in the hand-to-hand combat training, whatever. But Mark apparently is actually the one who's allegedly shot the firing shots and killed this guy who they say, or who I guess they suspected of being an actual poacher. Whether he actually was one or not, who knows? Anyway, this footage, it's out there on YouTube. Let's actually watch the clip. And it's not graphic because you don't actually see the killing itself,
blood or anything.
You don't see it, but you hear it. It's pretty depicted. It's sort of in the territory of graphics, so viewer discretion be advised. But let's just take a look at this clip. It's insane.
The bodies of the poachers are often left where they fall for the animals to eat. Conservation, morality, Africa.
So there it is. There's the footage. That's from ABC's actual news package, that hour-long special they ran about this couple in the 90s. That's actually the footage that's in question. And as you can see, it appears to depict what Jeff Goldberg and what others in that area claim was a killing, an unauthorized killing, unsanctioned killing and this couple apparently is still wanted in connection to this murder, which is so crazy.
And what's so crazy is that despite the video evidence, the victim and the shooter or alleged shooter have never been found. And it's worth note, like they've never, although the Owenses are they're wanted for questioning, they've never like investigated it more, it seems like. But it's also worth noting that because some people are probably thinking, wow, this is like decades later, like how can they still do this? In Zambia, there's no statute of limitations.
Correct.
So it's worth noting that, because although it's, you know, what, 1996, it's been decades, they're still wanted for questioning.
It's still an open case, and they still want to talk to Mark and Delia Owens. By the way, we should mention for their defense, they say they did nothing wrong. They deny having any hand in this. They say they were out there for the right reasons, that they never broke any laws. That's
Mark
what they
was throwing firecrackers to scare the poachers, and Chris wasn't there, and all this stuff.
Yeah, they essentially they deny any wrongdoing. That's the gist of what they say. They've been maintaining this for years because this story has been kind of bubbling up on and off for the past several years. Goldberg has been on top of the story, and now that the movie is coming out, he once again published the story with essentially the update saying, by the way, hey everybody, they're still wanted in connection. Don't forget. And a lot of people did not know about the story. I didn't know about this.
Neither did I.
This is absolutely crazy. Apparently there was some reporting on this in spring when ahead of the movie coming out, now in July. But it kind of went under the radar a little bit, and it's just crazy. So here's the thing, like we should mention that the reason this is even more compelling is because Delia Owens's book, Where the Crawdads Sing, again, which is what this new movie is based on, it's also about a murder, and it's about this big murder mystery and this like trial in this case, because the lead character, it's like this girl, she's like
Daisy Edgar Jones.
Right. Yeah. She's like a swamp girl who like grew up like kind of feral on her own, sort of an outcast.
A loner,
outcast. Right.
Yeah.
Outcast of society, somewhere out in the South. I don't know exactly where, whatever.
North Carolina.
There you go. So there we go. So, and the girl, she grows up, she gets taken in by a family, becomes somewhat normal. She falls in love with a guy. He goes off somewhere. She meets another guy who she falls in love with. And the story's mostly about their relationship. Apparently he's like abusive and this and that.
He tried to rape her.
Tries raping her.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like this, like kind of a scoundrel of a character. And then he turns up dead and murdered. And the authorities then go to her. She becomes the prime suspect. She becomes arrested. A whole trial goes on. I read ahead because I wanted to kind of get a.
I read the whole plot summary too.
Yeah, so did I. So
spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert for everybody who doesn't want to know, but we're gonna get into the details here.
Yeah.
So this character, I don't even know the character's name. Whatever, it doesn't matter.
Kaya.
There you go, Kaya. Thank you.
Yeah.
The character Kaya, she gets arrested. She gets put on trial, and it becomes this whole thing. And in the end, her legal team is able to defend her successfully.
Yep.
She gets acquitted for the murder, right? And throughout the whole novel, you don't really know for sure whether she did it or didn't. For the novel kind of makes you think that she didn't do it, that there's some other culprit out there, that she's not responsible for this guy's death. The twist at the end, again, spoiler alert, she did actually kill him.
Many years later, like she died, and like her like lover, not the one that she killed.
Yeah, the first one who, the first guy.
One,
yeah,
he like finds like the shell necklace that belonged to the guy that died.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, he hides her secret away forever. So she like lived a full life, died, and then it's revealed at the end that she actually killed the guy. And so, but it's supposed to be like as righteously motivated murder because he tried to rape her. So it's supposed to be kind of like an excuse, like it's not as big of a deal in a way.
Right. It's kind of like it's convoluted morality that by the end of the book, you were like, oh, okay, so she did kill him, but he tried raping her.
Yeah.
And there was promise of him coming back and maybe doing it again and just being this ongoing like evil presence in her life that would do her harm. So was she justified? Was she not? That's kind of the whole question of the book, right? Mm-hmm. And obviously the movie's going to follow that exact plot beat for beat. So there you go. We know what the movie's about. But what's fascinating, again, just kind of circling this back to the real life scandal, here's Delia Owens also wanted in connection for a real life murder. And you kind of, and what people have kind of like suspected, or what they've kind of like projected, I should say, is that she wrote this book almost like as a catharsis for her own situation. You know what I mean? Because the parallels are so right there about a murder. Did she do it? Did she not do it? Who knows? And I'm not saying Delia Owens is confessing to anything. I'm not saying that at all, but it's pretty striking. It's a striking coincidence, at least to me, and to a lot of other people too. Because, and it's funny because we should also say, in light of this Atlantic story coming out about Delia Owens and Mark Owens and the Zambian murder or whatever, there's a lot of backlash. Like, people they're not down for the movie now. They're coming out against the movie. They're making tons of jokes at the expense of both the movie, both the author, Delia, and also really anybody associated with the movie, including the actors. But more notably, I should say, Reese Witherspoon, Taylor Swift, who are the two big names that are attached to this film. Reese especially, because her company is producing this movie. She was the one who was really behind snapping up the rights to make this movie. And also she included that book in her book list, or her book club.
So it's like this book has been in her life for years now.
Yeah,
and she's obviously worked with Delia. Yeah. And it's like, the big question is, how much did Reese and Taylor Swift know? But especially Reese. Like,
yes,
in my opinion, I don't know if I can give my opinion now. Am I going to make my opinion
now?
Well,
what before we get into Reese, one thing I want to say real quick about Taylor Swift. In fact, we have a quick little soundbite of hers.
Oh, yeah.
Because she made a song for this movie. She did a big Instagram post about it. Taylor Swift is very much so on board with this movie, and presumably is kind of co-signing everything about it, including Delia. And again, it's unclear what Reese or Taylor knew about this, if anything. But let's play Taylor Swift's music video of the song for this movie. It's an original song that she wrote for this film specifically. Let's take a look at that.
And you didn't see me here. No, they never did see me here. And she's in my dreams into the mist.
So there it is. There's Taylor Swift's song for When the Crawdads Sing. I can totally see why Taylor Swift got on board with this. One, she probably read the book, loves the book, but more importantly,
as many people do.
As many people do.
It's a bestseller.
I'm sure. And look, I mean, as far as the work itself, I'm sure the book is fine and the story sounds compelling, whatever, great. But it's interesting that Taylor Swift got on board with this because, one, the book is like this very like feminist, empowering type of female-led story with a lot of themes about nature. And lately, Taylor Swift has been on a big nature tip. It
fits her aesthetic.
It does. It totally fits her aesthetic, like in the woods, blah, 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 whatever. It seems right up Taylor Swift's alley. So I can see why she got on board. I don't necessarily knock her for it. But again, back to your question about what did Reese Witherspoon and or Taylor Swift know about this scandal, if anything, and when, and if they did know anything, why did they proceed with making this movie? Because frankly, a scandal of this magnitude, and it's a scandal, I should say, it's a big deal. Like 100%. Just like anyone who's thinking, oh, come on, it was years ago, it's Africa, like whatever, that it does not matter. Somebody was killed. It went unanswered for. This is a big deal. And anyone trying to kind of sweep it under the rug, no, it's a big deal. And frankly, it's something, if I was a professional, I would steer clear of a project like this if I knew a central person involved in making that work was tied to some kind of scandal like this, and they had allegedly been involved in something like this. It might've been an accessory to murder. Nah, I'm sorry. Like that's off limits for me. And I'd like to give Reese and Taylor the benefit of the doubt and say, I like to think that if they knew, they too would have steered clear. So it kind of makes me think that they didn't know, but I kind of like to speculate and think, well, maybe they did and didn't care and just proceeded anyway. I mean, what do you make of that?
Okay, so I think Taylor and Reese are completely different in this. I think they can't be completely comparable.
As far as the burden, you mean? Or
yes,
okay,
because I think that Taylor contributing a song,
right.
I think that's a little. It's not the same. There's not for sure that she would it's more likely that Reese would know about it, is what I'm trying to say, than Taylor.
Right. Because Taylor would presumably be less involved. Like
exactly.
She was like, oh yeah, I like the book. Cool, you're making a movie about it. Cool, I'll write a song about it. No big deal. I agree. Her involvement and participation is certainly lower on the totem pole as far as responsibility.
Exactly.
Right.
But with Reese, I mean, and I hate to like criticize Reese Witherspoon at all because I love her.
Yeah.
But I think it would be highly unlikely that she's had this book in her book club for years.
Yep.
And then she's a producer on the film. Her production company is involved.
Right.
How, if she didn't know, I think it's highly unlikely that no one on her team knew. How did the researchers, how did the lawyers, how did they not, you would think that if she's so attached to this film,
right,
and was so attached to the book and the story that and she's working with Delia, you would think that like the background checks and the legal stuff, I feel like it would come up. It's just a Google search. It's like I saw someone on Twitter was saying like, you don't think they searched Wikipedia? Like literally, it's not that hard to get this information. Yes, we didn't know about it, but you Google it and it pops up.
Right. Like if I was
anything.
I agree. If I was involved in the production of this movie, starting with obtaining the rights to the book and all the legwork that goes into that and the research that goes into that, as a professional researcher, part of Reese Witherspoon's very professional production company, attached to Reese Witherspoon, who's an A-list celebrity and has a name to uphold. Yes, I would like to think that that she's not working with a bunch of lackeys and that somebody presumably would have seen this. And if that theory is true, which I think it is, if what we're saying is true, that Reese Witherspoon is not working with a bunch of morons, right? And that somebody had to have seen this. If they did in fact see this, then it's like, okay, well, maybe they did see it. Maybe it was, and whether it was brought to Reese's attention or not, who knows? But let's run with the theory that maybe it was.
Yeah.
If it was, and if she and her team at her production company decided, and maybe they approached Delia about it and said, hey, what's the deal with this? Maybe Delia said, oh my God, don't worry about it. It's BS. And maybe Delia, defended herself, and maybe Reese and company possibly believed her. And maybe they're like, maybe they believed her, like, okay, fine, no worries. We're gonna proceed with it anyway. That to me is equally scandalous. Not equally scandalous. It's not on the same level as what Delia is suspected of, but it's pretty scandalous in my opinion. If they believed her and then proceeded anyway, or even if they did approach Delia about it and they just kind of kept it in-house as in-house knowledge and then proceeded with it anyway. In any case, the fact that they proceeded anyway without, by the way, we should mention, not saying anything about it up to this day, as far as we know, nobody in Reese Witherspoon's camp or Taylor Swift's camp have addressed the scandal. And it's been getting picked up. So there's been stories about it. There are TikToks about it. It's getting a lot of steam on social media and on Twitter.
And not good. And it's all negative. Like this is just this dark cloud over this film.
It's exactly.
It's bad reviews.
Yes. It's a dark cloud over the film right before it's released, because it's coming out on Friday. And Reese Witherspoon and company are just out there on the red carpet, hamming it up, smiling, going through the whole show essentially. And I do find it weird especially now that it's out, it's being talked about, it's public now. And even at this point, she does not want to talk about it, or no one. So I don't know if anyone's asked her. Maybe no one's asked her, but you got to imagine at some point someone's going to ask her. And I'm very curious to see what she has to say about this. And again, the whole speculation of did she know? Didn't she know? Is it that big of a deal? In my mind, it is, because if you're an A-list celebrity like Reese Witherspoon, and just frankly, think about who Reese Witherspoon is. This squeaky clean celebrity. She is this person who is embraced and seen as like, holds up ideals. Like she's like this like bastion of like goodwill and this person of like a beacon.
It like kills me to like criticize.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like Reese Witherspoon is seen as this beacon of like of goodness, right? And like
sunshine. Sunshine. Like
exactly.
Literally.
Like when it comes to politics, when it comes to whatever, like Reese Witherspoon always says the right things. She's usually always championing the right causes, right? That's why she's in this like upper echelon of celebrities and beloved. And yet it's crazy to me that she got involved in something like this. And again, I have to suspect that maybe they did know about it and just decided to look the other way and continue on with the project, which frankly, if that's true, shame on her and her team. Again, if that's true, who knows if it's actually true? We're just guessing and speculating, but man, and by the way, just good gossip. Like, God damn, this is great stuff.
The tea, like it's just major tea.
It's all tea. It's all tea all day over here.
Like,
yes.
One quick thing to note before we finish the segment, and I know we're obviously focusing on Delia being still wanting to be questioned for the murder,
right?
But there's other things that Delia is problematic. I guess also the way she presents Black people in the book. And in the film, the way they talk and the way that her and her ex-husband have talked about Africans and how they refer to them is also very controversial. So people have been also bringing that up as well on social media. So it's like, why would Taylor Swift be involved with this, film and this author when she's, wanted for murder or questioning for murder, and she writes Africans and Black people this way and refers to them this way? Like, why would Taylor be associated with that? So it's like, there's no way, like, if Delia is so problematic, it's just so hard to believe that they would know nothing. I agree. I feel like they just, I don't know if Delia made it seem like, oh, like it's over. I don't know how it was presented to Reese. I don't know how her team presented it to her, but obviously.
Look, like when it comes to the race stuff and the alleged perceived racism or the racist undertones, that one I'm not gonna go as hard on that one because it's kind of like,
for sure, it doesn't compare.
It's in the eye of the beholder, really. And frankly, in this day and age, everybody makes a fuss about every little thing, and you know what I mean. Whether she's actually problematic on that level or not, each person can make their own shot. They can make their own conclusions on that. You know what I mean? But I agree. Like, again, from like a PR celebrity standpoint, especially if you're an A-list celebrity, even though whether she's problematic or not is up for debate, if I'm a celebrity, especially someone like Reese Witherspoon or Taylor Swift, I don't care if it's up for debate. I'm not going to get in arms race. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. So like, you're right.
And like you said, like today's day and age, like people will find everything. Like if I were, if you're working with someone, you check their Twitter, you check their background. Like it's like every single thing, because people like will find everything these days on the internet.
Right.
And something this big, there's no way that it wasn't missed.
Right. And again, we should mention before we move on, the movie is getting panned. Panned meaning it's certified rotten on Rotten Tomatoes. Apparently the movie sucks. It's sappy. It's corny. And look, I mean, whether it's corny because of the actual source material and the story, or it's corny because of the acting, or it's corny because of the costuming or whatever.
So
I don't know who that is. Frankly, I don't know who. I've never seen her in anything. So okay. I'll let you speak for her on that. Okay. But we'll see. I might actually check out the movie now because of all this buzz, just to kind of see what all the hype's about. So maybe the old adage of all publicity is good publicity. Maybe that'll hold true for this film. We'll see how it performs at the box office. But I got to say, it's not looking great going in. It's not looking great going in for Reese Witherspoon, Taylor Swift, and Delia Owens, obviously.
And let us know what you think, by the way, in the
comments. Yes, let us know what you guys think about this scandal, because it's crazy.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear what other people have to say about it.
100%. With that, we're going to move on to our next segment, Casting Alike. This is where we get into casting news for the week. And frankly, no other casting news really stood out to me more than what we're going to talk about,
the big one, for
which
sure.
is James Franco getting cast in this new movie. I think it's called You, Me, right?
Me, You.
Me, You. There you go. Me, You. It's directed by this Danish filmmaker. He's got a handful of movies under his belt, nothing too mainstream. So it's sort of like, it seems like it's a bit of an indie movie. Mm-hmm. I don't see any major studios attached to it yet, either producing it or distributing it. There are some big producers attached who've made some like relatively big movies that are producing the movie, financing it, whatever. But James Franco is the lead or the co-lead. He basically plays. He's a lead role in the. He's the lead role, and he basically plays a GI. The movie happens in post World War II in Italy. It's about a 16-year-old kid who's British. He's there in Italy vacationing with his family right after World War II. So everybody's kind of getting adjusted after that. He falls in love with like this girl. Apparently it's a Jewish girl who tells her about the horrors that her family went through, et cetera, et cetera. And he falls in love with her. He gets resentful of like Germans, and apparently there are some German tourists there in Italy as well. And something happens. He does something to kind of avenge this new girlfriend of his. And meanwhile, James Franco's playing this GI who's kind of
fisherman too.
Fisherman who's like sort of in the background, maybe the foreground, kind of like setting the whole scene of like, let me tell you what I saw in World War II or whatever, right?
That's kind of the tales of the war.
Right. So that's kind of the gist of the movie. It's actually funny because like a lot of details actually surfaced through the log line or whatever, like the synopsis.
Yeah, it was like so long. I was like, this is like the whole entire film. You're basically like saying what the whole movie's about.
There was a lot of details that came out in that. And,
that's
whether
like the gist.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, they didn't really hype up James Franco's role all that much.
No,
you know what I mean?
It seems like he's like definitely like, I don't think he's a main lead. He's definitely, they said like lead role, but I don't think he's the main lead in this.
I think he's a co-lead.
Like a co-lead.
But in any case, the fact that he's going to be in this movie, all the headlines that came out from this was, oh my God, James Franco's comeback to acting starts with this movie. How's he going to do? Blah, 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 blah. That's what everybody was reporting on. Of course, this all in the wake of him being one of the Me Too guys who got wrapped up in the scandal a few years ago.
First film in 4 years.
First film in 4 years. There were some roles and performances that came out shortly after his Me Too scandal that had already been filmed before. But since then, he's kind of been on ice. His career's been on ice. He's been taking a break and or not getting hired, one or the other. So this is kind of a big deal in the sense that this is his first film back. I don't know if it's necessarily a mainstream film. We'll see if it actually gets picked up or distributed. I don't think it's mainstream. We'll see if it ends up becoming mainstream. But look, I mean, James Franco, just 6 months ago, I think in December, he addressed the allegations because in 2018, when he was first accused by former film students of his of sexual misconduct and being inappropriate during scenes and kind of trying to force them to like film scenes that were sexually explicit, etc. He addressed it in 2018 on the Stephen Colbert Show, on the Late Show. And at the time, he didn't get too into the weeds, but he kind of did this sort of blanket denial saying, what they're saying about me on Twitter is not true. So he kind of like dug his heels in at the time, but he also in the same vein, he said, but I do recognize it's a time to let women speak. So I really don't want to shoot down any women's claims. But I was like, okay, what? Like, so on the one hand, you're kind of denying, but on the other hand, you're like, oh, let them speak.
He was dancing around. He was beating around.
Yeah.
He was just
now. Right. So then that was a few years ago. Now, again, late 2021, December, he was on Sirius XM doing an interview where he addressed the allegations at length and sort of apologized. We have a piece of his quote. Let's actually play that real quick, and then we'll get into what all this means.
Look, I'll admit, I did sleep with students. I didn't sleep with anybody in that particular class, but over the course of my teaching, I did sleep with students, and that was wrong. But like I said, it's not why I started the school. And I wasn't the person that selected the people to be in the class. So it wasn't a master plan on my part.
Yeah, so there's James essentially kind of like apologizing, but also kind of downplaying the allegations against him a little bit. If you listen to that full interview, he goes on to say, look, my thinking at the time was we're all adults. If it's consensual, who cares? We're, whatever, it's no big deal. It's all consensual. But then the host presses him a little bit and says, what about the power imbalance? What about the dynamic? Didn't you realize that you were in a position of power? You had a lot of influence. Don't you think that was wrong? And he kind of admits to it being wrong, but he does this little dance again here, sort of like, yeah, but also like, I'm not the one who told them to sign up, you know what I mean? Or whatever. And he's kind of making it seem like, yeah, I went around hooking up with students, but I wasn't out here raping people. And I will acknowledge he's certainly not on the level of like Harvey Weinstein,
of course,
or the Kevin Spaceys of the world or anything like that. But still, like, it sounds like he was, kind of being not a douchebag, just being a sleaze and kind of, abusing his power, which is wrong.
He ultimately settled.
He did. He was sued about this. I think 4 or 5 accusers sued him.
Yeah,
he ended up settling that lawsuit for about $2.5 million or so.
Yeah.
So he settled it, whatever. Here he is kind of half apologizing for it. And now here he is 6 months later being cast in this movie. Look, I'll keep this one brief. Like, James Franco, again, on the totem pole of like Me Too and like, whatever, I'd say he's like maybe about mid, like lower to mid for me, as far as like how outraged I was and the redemption level. I think he has more redemption level than a lot of his peers. And I'm not too mad at him kind of making a comeback. And even if the film becomes a hit and it's well received and whatever, okay, cool. Like it's fine. Like he's apologized for it. And like even though I still think he's kind of being shitty by like trying to have 1 foot in, 1 foot out on the whole matter, the fact that he's like sort of owning up to it, or at least willing to come on a talk show and discuss it, I think he's atoned a little bit, in my opinion. And the fact that he did settle, these girls have gotten some money. I think it's something where, in my opinion, I could kind of close the book on it and just move on as far as James Franco is concerned specifically. Because again, this also has something to do with it too. In my view, he's a good actor, and I enjoy James Franco's work by and large. And I'll admit that kind of probably plays a little bit into my bias as to maybe why I'm willing to kind of move on from it, because I like his work. I like his movies.
So I agree with some of what you're saying. So I have never been a big James Franco fan. I will say that I'm actually way more fan of Dave. I think Dave Franco is a lot more talented than James Franco, in my opinion.
Yeah, Dave's been getting a lot of work too, by the way.
Yeah, he's booked and busy. So totally. When it comes to, I agree with you that his offenses, and this could even be considered a scandal, but his offenses aren't even close to like someone like Harvey Weinstein, of course. Totally. And I think there are some people that I think should be canceled forever, like Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah.
In other instances, I think that people deserve a second chance. And after I think that they deserve to have a comeback, especially if they've, redeemed themselves, taken responsibility. I think he could do better with taking accountability and taking responsibility and doing a little more of that. And I don't disagree that he should be able to have a comeback.
Yeah.
And I think he can. However, I think it's still a little too soon.
Okay.
I know it's been 4 years, but I still think that he needs to wait a little bit longer. I feel like, and I don't know, I can't remember, like, I know he did a lot of like comedies and stuff, but I don't know what his like core demographic is, but I feel like female fans that know about this, maybe, I obviously can't speak for all women, but I feel like they might need more time before I don't know. That's just kind of where I'm at. Like me personally, I definitely think I need a few more years before I want to see a James Franco film.
Well, the thing is,
then again, it is a small film, so he is. Yeah. It's not like he's in a Marvel film, but of course, he doesn't even ever do that.
And that's the thing. It's like he's coming.
He has to
back.
Start somewhere. I get it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think 4 years is long enough. You think it's not long enough? That's all open for interpretation.
Yeah.
Again, like he's not. I don't see this as him being welcomed back into Hollywood with open arms at all.
No.
So that too also plays a factor in like.
That's a good point.
He's trying to get back in, but he's not really. We'll see if he actually gets back in or not. This is just his attempt to get back in. And look, whether his attempt, I have no control over that. Kevin Spacey's attempting to make a comeback right now too. We've
talked about that too.
And so whether we'll see what happens with that. I think Kevin Spacey's going to have a much harder time getting back.
Much harder time.
Yeah, if ever.
Yeah.
James Franco, though, I think can get back. Maybe it'll take some time, like you say. Whatever, he's doing his thing. We will see what comes to that. We'll monitor it. So we'll leave that there. And with that, we're going to move on to the Hollywood Hoedown.
Another actor.
Just me? Okay, sorry. Don't leave me hanging here. All right, there we go. So we're speaking of accused actors. We're moving on to just another one here. Armie Hammer. We got to quickly talk about Armie Hammer, and we are going to keep this brief. Actually, look. There's been this sort of mystery that's been
isn't he? Big question.
Yeah. So here's the deal. So Armie Hammer, as you guys know, was somewhat recently accused of sexual misconduct.
Last year.
And not just misconduct, but actual sexual assault. And I think some of those cases, whether they're civil or legal or criminal, I should say, are still playing out. Don't quote me on that, but I think he's still pending on some of the litigation. But this all kind of started when I think it was like in 2020 or perhaps maybe 2021. I think maybe it was last year, actually. Some alleged DMs and or texts between him and certain women were being leaked and they were going public, and it depicted Armie Hammer as this sexual deviant, this depraved guy. And he was talking about he was using a lot of cannibal like
interesting fetishes. Clearly,
I would just call them cannibal like language.
Yeah.
He wanted to drink blood. He wanted to barbecue some people. He wanted to eat some girls.
There was some non-consensual BDSM in there too. That's what I meant by fetish.
Yeah, and that's he was saying a lot of this stuff, and again, just kind of making himself seem like this like truly sexual deviant. And that stuff leaked, and then he denied it. He pushed back. And then more women started coming forward and saying, "Yeah,
he allegedly branded her."
Yeah, he allegedly branded her, and that he apparently he's a terror in the bedroom. He's like some hedonistic bastard or something. And all this was coming out, and Armie Hammer's career took a big pause, a very big pause. And by the way, we should mention, and this is all kind of happening during the pandemic, right? During the pandemic, Armie Hammer, I guess, moved down to the Cayman Islands somewhere.
That's where his estranged wife, by the way, his wife filed for divorce. So his estranged wife and their kids are there too.
Right. And they've left. They've left the island since then.
Oh, I think they're still there.
Are they? I heard that they left. Whatever. The point
I follow her on Instagram. It's fine. They were there.
All we know is that Armie Hammer is definitely still there. And look, like, the dust has kind of settled and sort of cleared as far as his scandal, his whole cannibal scandal, if you will. And his career is still on ice. The last big movie he was in was Death on the Nile. And I think even in that movie, at least for the trailers, they certainly downplayed
his. They did not show him in the trailers.
They did not show him in the trailers. I didn't actually see the movie. Who knows if he was heavily featured or not, but Armie Hammer's career was on an upswing. And now here's the headline. I'm kind of beating it around the bush here. The headline is Armie Hammer is working in the Caymans at a hotel. He's like
selling
timeshares. And we've confirmed this because, here's the thing. So even this is like such a little bit of a scandal / mystery, similar to our first segment, because this all started with like a viral flyer that was going around, apparently showing Armie Hammer as a concierge, like, "Hey, I'm Armie. Like, let me help you find blah, blah, blah," like whatever. And it was being passed around on the internet. Like, "Oh my God, look, Armie Hammer's working at this hotel in the Caymans as a concierge." He and his team denied that. They denied it. And then after a while, they kind of softened their denial. Similar, I should mention, very similar in pattern to the initial cannibal stuff that was first coming out. First, hard denial. Let's soften the denial. Then eventually, let's just kind of go quiet. That's sort of what happened here. He denied through his representatives. And then later they were like, "Well, actually, we know that he hangs out there a lot. He does a lot of smoke. He's got a friend there, a lot of smoke breaks." And then the smoking gun surfaced. In fact, we actually have the photos. TMZ got them. There's Armie in the office in uniform, I should mention. Okay. There's also like background photos of him, like with his shirt tucked in and the collar shirt. And he looks like he's in uniform. He looks like a hotel staffer,
employee. Yeah,
he's an employee. There he is at the hotel selling timeshares, in a new occupation apparently. And there's another photo too. I think it's even more close up than this. Yep, there he is. There's Armie Hammer's handsome ass. And it's just so. My only quick thought on this is a fall from grace. Obviously, I want to mention that this is embarrassing. He has every reason to be ashamed. And I know some people are like, "Oh my God, there's no shame in this." Shut up. There is shame in this. It's an absolute shameful matter because, again,
he was disgusting. I'm sorry. It's disgusting.
Disgusting. I mean, what do you mean? What's disgusting? His cannibal scandal or this?
Oh, the whole scandal.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is it's poetic to me that this is happening. And I'm not like mad at it. I'm kind of laughing at it and mocking it because frankly, it's funny. He was this rising star. He was, again, his career was on a huge ascendance. And then now it's the exact opposite. He's taking a straight nosedive. And apparently, because he's not getting hired, he's not getting booked for movies. He's not making much money. It doesn't seem.
Several projects.
Exactly.
Stuff happened.
Exited
several projects.
AKA got his ass fired.
Yeah. Lost his publicist. Lost his.
Yeah.
Agent.
So I mean, look, like the guy's got to work. I acknowledge that he's got to make money. So he's doing what he's got to do. That's fine. But I just wanted to say, it's kind of like a bit of a comeuppance a little bit, and it kind of serves you right, dude. Like this is a cautionary tale. The cautionary tale that I get from Armie Hammer, because whether, it all kind of depends on what you actually believe. Do you believe the allegations of like sexual assault, this and that, whatever? Even if he was like kinky in the bedroom and had these fetishes, it's a fine line, because especially if you're an A-list celebrity, you have got to rein in your sexual preferences, especially if they start bordering on like, oh, like, you know what I mean? Like, especially if they start bordering on
non-consensual,
if it starts
rape.
Yes. If it starts kind of, if it starts teetering that line and walking that line, if you're a celebrity, in my opinion, you're asking for trouble, because you could easily, it just takes a second or a woman to be like, you know what? Actually, I didn't really like that. And then all of a sudden it's already happened. And now you're public. She goes public. You know what I mean? Like, in my opinion, if you're an A-list celebrity, your sexual preferences or whatever, or your sexual practices really got to be kosher, like kosher to the point where you can never be accused of anything. And Armie Hammer was just running rampant out there. Like, he didn't care. He's like, I want to sip your blood. I want to eat your veins. Like, God damn, dog. Like, that's too much. You can't be doing that as Armie Hammer. Yeah, that's too, you're flying too close to the sun. And I'm not trying to like downplay the allegations. And I know it's it's a serious matter, but I just kind of find some humor in it. And now that he's a freaking hotel guy, it's the ultimate comedy. It's hilarious. And it serves him right, frankly. So I don't know. That's kind of my quick that's my quick little spiel on that. But
so I know we got to move on to our next segment soon, but just our last segment, but just a quick thought. My biggest question mark for this is that his family is like a big, wealthy, prolific family. I'm like, why is he working? He
is one of the heirs. I don't know if he's entitled to any of the inheritance or not, but he is one of the heirs for the Arm & Hammer, the actual Arm & Hammer brand, like the baking soda. That's him. That's what Armie Hammer is.
Hammer Business Enterprise.
Yeah. That's him. He's part of that family. So it's like, y'all got money. Like, what are you doing?
Yes, I'm like, why is he working in a hotel?
Yeah. Why are you acting hella broke? Unless you are hella broke, maybe he is. Who knows? Maybe he's cut off.
In our podcast pal Chantal, I was talking to her yesterday, and she made a good point. She's like, maybe part of his rehab, maybe he had to do stuff like this. And I was like, no, I don't know.
That's not usually part of rehab. Like, okay, you have to work 40 hours a week at a hotel or what? It's just, that doesn't make any sense.
Maybe he's trying to look like he's, I don't know.
I don't think so. I don't think so,
because he's getting photographed. You don't think
I don't think he does, because these photographs up until recently, they weren't surfacing. And I imagine he's been working there for a little while now. So I think he was trying to lay low here in the Cayman Islands, where it's not Hollywood. There's not a ton of paparazzi. Right. And I think this is something he's been trying to kind of keep under wraps. And I think he's embarrassed by it, rightly so. So I don't know. We'll see. But
I just have to say that I was like a huge Armie Hammer fan, because I was a diehard Call Me by Your Name fan. Yeah. Because that's where I became a Timothy stan, was after watching that amazing film. One of my favorite films from the past few years. Yeah. I haven't been able to watch this movie since the whole Armie scandal came out, because people were, after it came out, people were like, I know we shouldn't laugh, but people were like posting like clips from scenes when he's like sucking on Timothée Chalamet's foot and stuff. And I'm like, can I watch this movie without thinking about this? Yeah. And I'm like, I feel like I'm almost at the point where I'll be able to, but I haven't yet to try, because I just have the visual of, I'm like, thank you, Armie Hammer, for ruining one of the best. I'm like, you were so good in that movie.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
he's been in a lot of good movies, and a lot of them are tainted now, I would argue.
Social Network, great film.
Yeah. So
close your eyes when he comes on screen.
Right. But anyway, Armie Hammer kind of getting his comeuppance. It's poetic justice. It's beautiful. I like it. We're going to move on to our final segment. What'd you see? What'd you think?
We got thoughts.
We have got to get into Thor: Love and Thunder. I'm gonna quickly go through it, because I saw it last night. I didn't see it over the weekend. Screw that. I saw it Cheap Ticket Tuesday. Went to go see it. Relatively not so packed of a theater.
Give us your thoughts.
I was going in with bias. The bias being, my bias. I was already kind of crapping on the movie before this. And we actually did a story. I did a story for TMZ over the weekend talking about film Twitter
ripping
it. And they were totally ripping it. A lot of people were saying it's too childish. It's too kiddish. It's too juvenile. Too many jokes. It's not serious enough of a Marvel movie, especially for a character like Thor, when part one, and maybe, I don't know, part two is different, but part one for sure where it took itself seriously, and you kind of had some, I know it's a Marvel movie and it's a kid movie by default, but even Marvel movies, especially these days, or of late, I should say, they have been some serious movies dealing with some heavy themes and like some heavy stuff. This is the exact opposite of that. That's what Film Twitter was saying. I went and saw it. I do agree that it was frivolous and silly and maybe a little too jokey, but I walked away not entirely hating it. Especially since people, I should mention, I have not seen any of the other Thors. You
never watched Ragnarok? Come on.
No,
the one you had to watch.
I don't think so. And I get the gist. Ragnarok is also directed by Taika.
It's better.
So this movie is supposedly just more of the same in that type of sense, like more of this comedy, more silliness, kind of turning Thor into a bit of a joke. That's certainly what this movie did. And like, look, I agree. Like, I was kind of like looking at my watch as the movie was going on, but I tried enjoying it for what it was, and I did enjoy it for what it was. There were some funny jokes. It's a silly movie, and the fight scenes or whatever. And I know there's like a heavy emotional arc with Natalie Portman and her cancer. Spoiler alert, she dies. There you go. And even in the heavy moments,
you watched the post-credit scenes, right?
No, I left. You can explain the post-credit scenes if you want. I don't even care.
Okay.
But yeah, so even on the heavy stuff, the emotional stuff, I couldn't get invested, but I don't think that wasn't the purpose of the movie. The purpose of the movie was just literally to entertain. And it for me, it really felt like a throwaway film. And I should probably be more mad about that, or maybe more like irritated by that, but I'm not. I went in there. I knew it was going to be goofy. All the chatter ahead of time was telling me exactly that. So my expectations were set exactly where they needed to be. And I kind of just took it for what it was. I enjoyed it for what it is. I had a few laughs along the way, but it's as far as like where it ranks in like Marvel movies that I've seen, God, it's like damn near toward the bottom somewhere. It's a goofy movie. It's a stupid, goofy kids movie. That's all it is. And for the people that say that Thor has been ruined, the character's been ruined, and or the franchise has been ruined. Look, I'm not a huge comic book nerd. I don't really give a shit. But for the people that might feel that way, who are really invested, I could see their gripe. I could understand their frustration a little bit, because yeah, it was a throwaway Thor movie. That's kind of my take on that. What do you think?
Okay, so I thought the film, I went in kind of what you were saying, what Film Twitter was saying. There was this one guy who was like, it's one of the worst films I've ever seen. I'm like, oh God, that's so dramatic. Like, I doubt it's that bad. Okay, first off, I will say, overall, I thought the movie was okay.
Okay.
I thought there's things I like and things I didn't like. I was disappointed because I think it had the potential to be a lot better. So things that I didn't like. I had trouble with the pacing. It was way too rushed.
It was rushed.
Scenes that it was like 1 hour and 59 minutes. Scenes that should have been longer or more carried out were too short, and vice versa. So I think they should have focused more on the emotional scenes, I thought it really shined with the rom-com. I thought that was funny. I really liked that.
Sure.
They should have used more of Natalie Portman's character as Mighty Thor. They should have used more of Valkyrie. They totally freaking sidelined her.
Right.
They should have focused more on that. They should have used way more of Gore the God Butcher. I thought Christian Bale was amazing. They should have focused more on that.
That I will back. Christian Bale was phenomenal.
He was great,
as a bad
and they
guy.
should have used him way more. But when it comes to, I'm bringing this up under pacing because there was a report I saw. I don't know if this was true. It was from like Ringerverse. I don't even know if that's a actual like a respectable outlet or whatever. But they were saying that Marvel reportedly said it had to be under 2 hours, which I don't know. I think that's kind of BS, because all Marvel films are over 2 hours. Like Endgame was like 3 hours and something, but obviously that film had to be longer.
Right.
But after seeing this film, things kind of make more sense. Like if that were, it seems like it could be true, because the way things were chopped up and how they didn't go together, it seems like, oh, we had to take this out. We got to take this out. So off that, I think the tone was like all over the place. Where I said last week how Ragnarok had such a great balance between the humor and the action superhero stuff, the balance was way off in this film. And then you're adding like romance, and you're adding this cancer emotional storyline as well.
Right.
They should have focused like more on that, because again, that's where the film shined. And like, as for the humor, like some of the gags were funny, but there was just way too many. I mean, I definitely think there could have been less gags. I have to say, did love the gag when Chris Hemsworth was naked and they showed his butt. Like, I'm Taika giving people what they want. Had to mention that.
Yeah,
but like,
I don't know if that's actually a gag though. It's just like it's just something that happens. A gag, a recurring gag is the goat thing. That was at first it was kind of funny, but
dumb.
God, that was annoying. The goats were like popping in like every like 10, 15 minutes. I'm like, what is going on here? Like just screaming. I'm like, it's just that's a gag. That's a running gag where I was like, God damn, like that's too much.
And I think that another thing that I didn't like real quick, because I just want to note this. I was kind of excited that they're bringing Greek mythology, and that was actually something that was in the post-credit scene. Brett Goldstein from Ted Lasso is Hercules.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, so he was shown at the end in one of the post-credit scenes. But I don't understand why they gave Russell Crowe an accent. That ruined it. The accent made it I'm like, oh, he looks the part. Like, we're going this like party-ish kind of, god of the Mount Olympus or whatever it was called.
Yeah.
But like, he had that dumbass accent. I'm like, it made it sound so stupid.
It's so funny that you say, because like, if that annoyed you, but that actually kind of mildly entertained me. That was one of the moments. That was one of the moments of the movie I was kind of into. I was like, all right,
I like Russell Crowe, but the accent was terrible.
Yeah, he sounded Greek or something. He was like, "Hello, I'm Zeus." How about you? It was funny. I was like, because it came out of nowhere. It made no sense. I dug it. I did. I actually liked the Russell Crowe.
I mean, it was
thing.
funny, but I like Russell Crowe, but the accent was weird. And then the other thing that I did like was I don't know if you know this, but so I did like the whole children and family aspect, but again, I think some of it was kind of rushed. But I love how the girl that played Gore's daughter is actually Chris Hemsworth's daughter.
Oh, no way.
So, okay. And then Christian Bale's kids were in it. Taika's kids were in it. Natalie Portman's kids were in it.
I didn't know that. All right.
And I like, again, like how the end, like it was like he, is now kind of like an adoptive dad to his real life daughter, but Gore's daughter. But again, the balance was off. It went from him being like, oh my God, like, Jane died, and then it's like, now I'm a dad. Like, it was just like,
it was just over. It was like sad, and then it was over with. On the subject of the kids, I got to say that whole storyline / it's not even a subplot. It was like the main plot, but the plot of the kids, and anytime the kids, especially when the kids were like fighting and stuff, and they got like Thor powers. The kids annoyed the hell out of me. It was so lame.
You were gonna say that.
The kids were so hate the damn kids. Lame, and that's just like, and some of Thor's interactions with them were kind of funny, but the kids themselves, the kids themselves are just like, get the fuck out. I hate kids in general. I really do. I'm sorry. I maybe I'll like some of my own kids one day, but like I'm like
kids, but I want to have kids.
I'm like that Michael Jordan meme. Fuck those kids, like real shit. Like, kids. Yeah, fuck them kids. Like these kids, I don't got kids, and like, and even like the whole like, we gotta go save the kids. All that was lame. I was like, really? This is what's driving the narrative here? Like, this is, god damn, this is trash. But whatever. Again, I just kind of went along for the ride. I just kind of unplugged my brain and enjoyed it for what it was.
Well, last thing I want to mention before we wrap up here, but a lot of people are now again bringing up the conversation with every Phase 4 film, like, what's the MCU doing? Like, this is quantity over quality. Phase 4 doesn't seem to be cohesive or really leading somewhere. Blah blah blah.
Yep.
And Phase 1 didn't really have much. Phase 1 of the MCU didn't really have like a lot of things going together. It was all kind of like introducing each character.
Right.
But they had the Infinity Stones weaved in there, whereas now we don't really have that. And I follow several like TikTokers about movie TikTokers, and a couple of them point out something really interesting that I wanted to note is that, and I was like, how did I not realize this? So several of the MCU Phase 4 films are literally like the director's films, meaning Multiverse of Madness is a Sam Raimi film. Eternals is a Chloe Zhao film.
Right.
Thor: Love and Thunder is a Taika Waititi film.
Right.
So I guess there's pros and cons to letting a director have creative control, but it seems like now there's more cons than pros because they're not really folding into other, like, you got to have some of the traditional superhero stuff.
Well, it's not even that. It's like, you know
what I mean?
It's not, I agree. I do agree. But like, it's good to like let the directors have their own style and
For
stuff.
sure.
But there's a difference between that and what's actually happening, which is, yes, these directors are getting their own movies. They're definitely inserting their style and their flair, but whoever is overseeing it, AKA Kevin Feige, where I don't know, does he even work at Marvel anymore? What's going on? Nobody is shepherding this thing saying, hey, like looking at the scripts and saying, okay, we need a through line. What's the connecting dots? What's the through line? What like add, do a little cameo, do a little this, do a little hint of that, do a little nod to the other movie, like do something. Because all these movies are so disjointed. And there's no through line whatsoever that I can detect. And Kevin Feige's trying to make himself seem like, oh, there's a through line. You just don't see it. No, you're lying. There is no through line. There's nothing.
Stuff like, I know I don't know if we're out of phase 1 or phase 2, because again, I didn't watch those films when they first came out in theaters. Like I became a Marvel fan late. But, I feel like there was several like post-credit scenes with Thanos. Like in the beginning, and they got Infinity. So it was all just like Thanos in there, just like they need more. And he says like I know you haven't watched the television shows, but he said like, oh yeah, Loki fits in Multiverse of Madness, and like it didn't. And like Spider-Man No Way Home fits Multiverse of Madness, it didn't really. It just like had to do with the multiverse, but like they're not like fully connected. And like they set some of them set up. I know you don't watch shows, but some of them set it up so they could be connected, and then they weren't even connected. I'm like, what's the whole point of acting like they are going to be if they weren't? So it's like a waste. Again, it's the quantity over quality. Like they need to like slow down.
They do.
Like, bring more stuff. You can continue bringing out more content, but like let's slow it down and really focus on the overall picture.
I agree, and I think that's a great place to leave it. Thor: Love and Thunder. Mostly shit, but like it's like goofy.
Ragnarok
funny.
is better.
It's goofy, funny shit. So whatever, I'm not too mad at it. And with that, we'll leave you guys. Thank you for tuning in and hanging out with us. We'll be back next week. Stream us on Spotify, Apple, iHeart. We're on YouTube. We're on the website as well. And again, leave some meaningful comments. Leave some meaningful comments of substance, not just insults, because there's a lot of insults usually. But whatever. Leave some actual substantive comments about the material we're talking about, and we will try to respond to them. The reason we're not doing that this week is because there were no substantive comments. So there you go. Anyway, take it easy, you guys. We will check in with you next time, and see ya.
Have a good one.